Hello, everybody, and Happy New Year. Welcome back to another episode of The Way the World Works. So it is the first episode of 2026. Oh my goodness, we did it, guys. We survived 2025. Here we are. I want to do a New Year's themed episode. And usually, I think every year I've done something. It's been different every year, but something about goals or New Year's resolutions, because that is what everybody does this time of year, right? We make these resolutions. Most of us break them, but we make these resolutions. We have this concept of let's have a new start. Let's, start fresh in this new year and be better than we were the year before. But where did this come from? Is this something we just started doing in the most, in like the last century or two, which I know doesn't sound like modern, but considering it kind of is? Or did this start long ago? Well, I'm going to answer that for you right off the bat. It started thousands of years ago. And so we're going to jump into that right now and talk about the origin of New Year's resolutions and goal setting and how they kind of morphed into what they are today. So let's start first with the ancient Babylonians, because that is going to be where we first see these New Year's resolutions that specifically came at the start of a new year. It wasn't just, a random festival in the middle of the year. It was the start of the new year. So the Babylonians would get together and they'd make goals, but it wasn't like, I want to be healthier and I want to go to the gym. It was, you know what, I'm going to make an effort to return my neighbor's farming tool on time. He let me borrow it. I'm going to return it. I'm going to repay my debts when I borrow money from somebody. So it wasn't, even though these were things that made them better society members, made them better neighbors, they were actually doing it to please their gods. Because the Babylonians, they were polytheistic is what they call it. Poly meaning many and theistic meaning God. So they believed in many gods in their religion. And so they were doing it to please their gods. But by doing that, it also made them better neighbors and better to each other. And that's really important because when we think about what it takes to live in a free society, what it takes to really embody individualism, it takes being good to each other, and it takes doing everything you promise to do. If I borrow something from you, I better return it because that's what I promised to do. Because we make a better case for not needing government to make a ton of laws to make us, good people, laws to keep us good, if we can show that we can do it without them. So I think that's a really important lesson that maybe we can incorporate when we make our own goals this year. So let's jump ahead a little bit. So where did it go from there? Well, the Romans set January 1st. So you'll see that starts to have a recurring theme. January 1st was their new year, just like us. And it was named after Janus. And Janus is a two-faced god, one of their gods, a two-faced god who could look at the past and the future. So two-faced not meaning, when we call someone two-faced today, it usually means like they talk bad about someone behind their back, or they're nice to your face and mean behind your back. But when we talk about two-faced with Janus, it's that he could see past and future. And so, he's looking at what you did. It's kind of like Santa Claus in a way, looking at what you did but what you will do. So a little bit, he's got the future part that Santa doesn't have. So people on this day, on January 1st, the Romans, they would make promises to improve their behavior. So that might sound familiar to you. To be kinder, to be more honest, to be more responsible. And there was this concept too, this idea that when they were setting these promises, that they were reflecting on the past year and choosing better habits. And if you think about it, that sounds very close to the way that we do resolutions today. So it's something we took from the Romans. And, the lesson here, of course, for them was to self-reflect, to grow, to be better people, which in turn would make them better to their neighbors and would help, help the world show that you could live in a society without the government. And I'm not saying the Romans didn't have government. Obviously they did. But the reason I'm pointing this out is I want to make sure you're making the connection as to why things like New Year's resolutions or however you want to do your goals, but working towards being a better person than you were yesterday is actually like one of the most important things to living in a free and individualistic society. Because again, we have to show that we can be self-reliant and have personal responsibility. So I want you to be thinking of that. I'll stop saying it over and over again, but I want you to be thinking about that during this episode. All right, so from there, then we moved down to the Christians, and they were treating New Year's Eve like a time to take moral inventory. So checking in with themselves to see how they could live better. And by moral inventory, like how can you be a better person? Maybe you told a white lie here and there. You know what? Most of us do it from time to time, but we really want to work on it. You know, they're taking that moral stock, the inventory of their lives. So there was a tradition, it was called Watch Night, which involved praying and thinking about what to improve before the new year began. So this was more kind of personal, even though the other two, the Romans and Babylonians, these were personalized goals. You're going to notice that in the Christian tradition, it's a very kind of, you went by yourself and you reflected alone. It wasn't as much of a celebration. So Watch Night, people are sitting and they're praying and they're kind of, writing down maybe or reflecting on what they could do better. And so this is really important. One, I think, again, it's just so important to take that moral inventory, as they called it. But whether you do that and celebrate it with a group or whether you do that alone, however you think is best, maybe it's a little bit of both for us, I would think, with the way New Year's is for us. Okay, so let's talk about modern. And you're going to laugh because when I say modern, I mean the 1800s. And listen, I know that I am not young, but I was not born then. So I know that it seems like modern. That wasn't that close to where we are now, over 200 years. But in hindsight, it kind of is. So in the 1800s is where we start getting this really modern, or the way we use it today, version of New Year's resolutions. And you saw newspapers actually calling it New Year's resolution. So that's the earliest time we can trace it back to that label. And people joked even then that people would set resolutions and then they were hard to keep and half the people didn't actually do it, right? So even then it was a joke, because guess what, guys? As humans, we are flawed, and it's really hard to break bad habits, and it's really hard to get into new habits. So it's not for the faint of heart. It's not easy. And I know we tease and we are hard on ourselves and other people when they make goals and then they don't meet them. But I think it's great to even set them. Obviously, it's better to achieve them, but even just every year knowing like I'm probably going to fail on a few of these, but I'm going to try to do it anyway, like that's good. That's a good mindset. At least you're trying. And I think that's at least better than not trying at all. So in the 1800s, we're going to see this switch. It's not going to be so much of a religious ceremony or anything based on religion. Instead, it's just going to be these promises to self-improve and to make these goals. They're, like I said, you'll notice in the other examples with the Romans, Babylonians, and the Christians from long ago, that it was, how can I be more moral? How can I be better to please our gods or our God, depending on if you were monotheistic or polytheistic. But now it's going to be things like, I want to work out more, or I want to stop eating so much sugar, which is on my list every year. And every year I failed that one. We'll see. So this is where we're really going to start seeing the form it takes today. And what's really interesting is it doesn't really matter what you called it, or what your reasoning, like who it was you were trying to please, whether it be, a religious thing or personal. It's all good, right? It's nice that we're doing these things, that we have this tradition in society where we're like, you know what? Let's be good people. Like, let's do what we can to be better than we were yesterday or better than we were last year. Now, the 20th century is where it's going to get, obviously, a lot exactly like we see it today. And that's because you have this rise of self-help, is what we call it, where bettering ourselves and becoming better actually becomes a whole industry. And I know I'm a sucker for it, where it's like, what can I do to actually better myself and optimize my performance and be the best worker and be in the best physical shape? So you're going to see that. And also gyms. I think we forget that working out, going to a gym was not really a thing that long ago. So bodybuilders like Arnold Schwarzenegger, the actor back in the day, he was like a professional bodybuilder. Those were really the only people using gyms. And that was in the, I think, 60s or 70s. Or you had the, like, boxers might use a boxing gym, but it was specific to what they were training for boxing. So you didn't have gyms where everyday people just went in and bought a membership and they did it. In fact, if you want to see something funny, look at what, like, exercising, I don't know why I said it in quotes, but well, kind of go see what exercising looked like in like the 50s or the 60s. The way that they did exercise classes, we look at them, we're just like, that's so silly the way they did it. Like, go back and look at just look at some pictures, or you'll find some articles on that. It's really interesting to see how that's developed. But in the 20th century, we've seen gyms explode, right? There's gyms everywhere, and there's all sorts of different kinds of gyms, and there's Pilates and bar classes, and still like kickboxing or boxing, whatever it is. So you're seeing these opportunities where people are now able to spend time and money working on themselves. And there's actually an economic lesson in this too, because as the world has gotten, I think, better, even though there are problems in every era, it used to be that people had to spend all day tending to their farms and their crops so that they could eat. They had to get up and milk their cow in order to have milk in the morning. And as things have changed, right, as we now have this wonderful division of labor and specialization in grocery stores and trucks that are refrigerated that can carry, perishable foods across state lines or even across international boundaries, now you have people spending less time fulfilling their basic necessities, right? They don't have to go through that much to get milk, except for if you're like me, literally putting in an Amazon order and having it arrive at your doorstep 2 hours later. So we have more free time. And now that we have more free time, we can focus on things like exercise or reading a self-help book. So it's really interesting. Or even spending money on organizing things, like the Container Store is an entire store literally just filled with like expensive acrylic organizers for desk drawers and things like that. It's a whole industry now trying to be these better versions of ourselves. And so this becomes, again, less religious and more secular in the 20th century, which doesn't mean people aren't still doing it, for overall religious ends, or even that there's not religious goals. Like maybe you want to read the Bible this year. So just because it is secular doesn't mean it's only for non-religious people, or, it's for everybody. It's just less of an emphasis. It's more for everybody than one particular religion today. And honestly, people use these all over the world. I mean, billions of people make resolutions every year. I'm scared to think how many of those people actually keep them. But again, trying is good. Trying is good. And every country actually has their own way about this. And you also have to remember there's different New Year's dates. We celebrate January 1st. A lot of the world does, but there's the Lunar New Year. There's the other calendars people use. But even then, there's still this focus on a fresh start. There is still this focus on, what did I do? Let me reflect and see what I did last year and see how I can better myself this year. And I think that is so important. I'll be honest, I get a little obsessed with self-help. And I think it's because, or not trying to improve, self-improvement, I should say. There was one year, I think it was 2023, or 2022, I just achieved every one of my goals, and it was crazy. And that has never happened again. I want to say that for the record. But that year I was on fire. And having that year made me think okay, then I can actually keep some goals this year. And just one thing to share with you, 2022, I decided that for the first time in my life, I was going to be consistent about working out. And so this January now is I had the 4-year anniversary of making that promise to myself and actually doing it. So you can keep resolutions. And even more importantly, it doesn't have to happen on New Year's, right? You can start over any day. Every single day that you wake up is a chance that you get to restart and have a do-over. And so remember that. If you fail on your New Year's resolution, you know what? It happens. Most of us do. Try again the next day. And if you don't, this year I did not meet my book goal. And I was bummed about that. But then I looked back and I was like, but I read more, I don't want to say some books are better. Well, some books are better than others. But I read very academic, very intellectual books. I went through two of the most prominent American history scholars. I read their books. And so I took books that maybe it took longer to read, but I was really engrossed in them. And I was taking what I learned and studying it further and writing things. So yes, I didn't meet the number, but I actually did something different. So don't look at everything as a failure. Some things are a failure and we can get better at that. But they're also very personal. And another thing, I talked about this in an episode, a New Year's or a resolution episode I did years ago. Another thing that's interesting is sometimes people want to share their resolutions. And one really crazy little psychological fact, People are actually more likely to keep their resolutions if they keep it to themselves or only tell the people very close to them, one or two people. And the reason for that is declaring like social media or in front of a big group, like, I'm going to do this. It gives us a dopamine rush. That's all those like happiness, like endorphins. It gives us this dopamine rush. And then it's like our mind feels like we already achieved the goal just by saying it out loud, and we haven't. And so it's really interesting. So if you want a better chance of actually doing what you say, write it down, maybe tell your closest friend or like your mom or something, but try not to publicly declare it because you might be less likely to do it. So I have droned on for too long, probably. So we will wrap it up there. Again, Happy New Year's, guys. This is going to be so exciting to have another year with you and to, break down all the crazy things that happened this year. Hopefully it's not too crazy, but every year seems to be. We will leave it there. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. And until next time, I will talk to you later.